welcome to this Field and Studio video tutorial. Today we'll be looking at developing a better understanding of aperture and depth of field. We'll be operating in manual mode today, accessed by selecting the M on the mode dial of the top of your camera. This will allow us to set aperture independently of all other camera settings. The Q menu, or Quick menu, will be our primary learning tool today. Turn on your camera and access the Q menu by using the Q button on the middle right of the back of the camera. You'll see the menu appear on the LCD screen. Now use the command dial's inner selector to navigate to the aperture element. We'll change the aperture settings using the front selection dial located near the shutter button on the front of the camera. Remember that aperture is a measure of the size of the opening inside the lens of the camera, which then allows a specific amount of light to come through the lens. To understand aperture, let's look at this Zeiss manual lens set at f4. Notice the aperture is wide at this setting. This will allow a large amount of light through the lens. Now we'll change the aperture to f22. Looking through the front of the lens, we can see the aperture blades have closed down, and the aperture has become much smaller. This will allow very little light through the lens. If this is difficult to understand, this example may help. Let's use a lens that has an aperture range of f4 to f22. f22 allows the least amount of light through the lens, so let's call that 1 bucket of light. Now, if we open the aperture to f16, we have double the amount of light as f22, 2 buckets of light instead of 1. Doubling the amount of light is called adding a full stop to our exposure. At f11, we have double the light of f16 and 4 times the light of f22. 4 buckets of light, or 2 stops above f22. Now let's go to f8. We have double the amount of light compared to f11, a total of 8 buckets of light, and 3 stops above f22. At f5.6, we have double the light of f8, meaning we have 16 buckets of light, or 4 stops above f22. And finally, at our hypothetical lens's widest aperture of f4, we have 32 buckets of light, or 5 stops above f22. At the same time as aperture increases the amount of light coming through the lens, it simultaneously reduces the relative distance that remains in focus in our image. This is known as depth of field. If we set our lens to f22, or 1 bucket of light, and focus on an object 6 feet away, everything from about 3 feet to a distance of infinity will be in focus. This is also known as hyperfocal distance, or where the closest object to a distance of infinity is clearly focused. And at an aperture of f4, or 32 buckets of light, a very small distance will be in focus, from about 5 feet to 8 feet. As you can see, as we let more light through the lens, we have decreased the area in focus at the same time. In this image, notice how the yellow crosswalk sign is now very out of focus, indicating our depth of field has become much shallower. This is in contrast to the earlier f22 image, seen here, where both the color checker and the yellow crosswalk sign are both clearly in focus. So now let's review. At an aperture of f22, we have a small lens opening, or aperture, but a high depth of field. At f4, we have a large lens opening, but a small depth of field. In other words, we trade light for depth of field when we're using aperture. I hope this quick tutorial about aperture, exposure, and depth of field has been helpful. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out our website at blog.brettelerickson.com. Until next time, keep at it in the field and in the studio.